So here we are for tonight's meeting of the Parish Council, and welcome to all the members of the public who've come to attend. Apologies and reasons for absence.
Councillor Redskins has some under engagement, and Councillor Collins childcare issues.
Fine.
Those.
We do accept them? Yes?
Yes.
Yep.
And I saw Mrs. Parker today, so apologies.
Okay, from the public. Okay. Declaration by members of any interest pecuniary or other than pecuniary in
No.
Conduct? No. So I have no applications for dispensation. A reminder to everyone that the meeting is being recorded. If all goes well, it will get put on YouTube. And at this point I'll adjourn the meeting for the public session so the public can express a view or ask a question on relevant matters on the agenda. The public are welcome to stay afterwards and observe the rest of the meeting, or as much of it as they wish, but they won't be able to take part once the public session ends. We always in the public session take the planning applications first. So the first one is Pear Tree Cottage. Is anyone here who wants to talk about Pear Tree Cottage? Either the applicants or anyone else who wishes to talk about it? And then maybe councillors have questions. No one on Pear Tree.
Well,
Did you want to?
I don't know, to be honest, that we built a deck here and I didn't realise it was going to be an issue until it became an issue. But I don't know, I can't answer questions because I don't know what the questions would be if anybody
Okay, well, I take the point that it's a retrospective application. So if I join the dots or read between the lines, I assume you didn't think it was going to need a planning application, but now it does.
Yes.
Okay, and the planners in Ashford are always the best guide as to the exact details of what comes under a permitted development and what doesn't. And evidently they've taken the view, I'm sure for good reasons, that this doesn't.
It didn't originally, it was within a metre of the boundary. But as soon as I was told that, it's now 1,200 within the boundary. I've got 2 acres and it's 1,200 metres. So it's within what they wanted, but it's 100 metres away from my house. It only looks a swimming pool, the pool house and the main house. It doesn't overlook anybody else, so my field. Okay.
The PDO regulations are known only to planners if that they are immense and very complicated. I wouldn't say any more than that. Okay. Does anyone want to question anything about that? Even
No questions.
The applicant said he may not be able to. Okay. The next one is Underhill Orchard. Is anyone here for Underhill Orchard? We've had some correspondence that we'll get to.
The applicants are right outside.
Hello. So I know you want to put up an agricultural building, and we've had letters from some of your neighbours. Okay. And you are farming for hay, keeping hay in the barn, I gather, and you also keep sheep, and the sheep may occasionally, if they have trouble lambing, need to go in the barn. Is that broadly the picture?
Yes, especially this April, there was a bit of a blizzard, and that time of year can be quite chilly. We like to look after them when they're young.
Sure. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
No.
And no one else wants to raise anything particularly on that one? No? Good, thank you. Next one is Hurst House. I don't think we... Oh, yes. Hello.
Hello.
You're Mrs. Chambers?
I am.
Right, okay. So I know you want to put in a PV array in part of your garden. Hello.
Apologies a little bit late.
No problem. We'll come to you as soon as.
Yes.
I know you'll want to get on. Okay, so yes, you want to put in a PV array in part of your garden, and there's an application for that. Anything you need to tell us about it?
Only that when we initially looked at this, obviously one of the things is they said put it on the roof. Well, the 140-year-old house with Kempeg tiles on the roof, that proved to be just not possible. I won't say I was disappointed at that because I thought it would be more of an eyesore on the roof. The other option is then a ground array. The key things they're concerned about is in the curtilage of a listed building, where not. Is it in a conservation area, where not. You're allowed to have them in the A and B, but they're particularly keen on other public rights of way that can see where your array is going to be. There isn't. And then they talk about, is it visible from the public highway? We're not on public highway, private road, but we're still not visible anyway, and none of our immediate neighbours can see it. So that's all I really wanted to just put a bit of context
Sure.
around it.
Yeah. Any questions from anyone?
No.
Anyone else want to raise any point there? No? Okay, and then the last one is Hope Farmhouse, the proposed 4-bay garage. Is anyone here from?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
So, are you the gentleman who was just on the email today?
I am, yes.
Yeah, okay. So, what do you want to tell us about it, if anything?
It was more that obviously it's a revised application from the one that went in before. Obviously taken on board what the highways asked for. We went obviously in to get pre-application from them, which they've given us really positive feedback for it. They've obviously said that they'll support the application as long as we put some grounds onto it when it gets, that it's not going to be used for any business or anything like that, but it's literally purely to hold some more cars inside it, really.
Are you the facilities person or the
yes.
planning person? You're the
No,
facilities
facilities.
person.
So essentially, Fiona and her partner Andy own the
You
house,
own that, yes.
and within the business that that they own, I look after all their fleet and facilities.
I've got you.
So,
Understand.
but obviously it's me running around doing all the emails on behalf
You're
of
doing the work.
Andy and Fiona. So
The owner owns. Right, understand that. Now, you said that KCC have said they'll support it since you put in further and better particulars on the access and splays and what have you.
yeah,
But
so
we don't see that on the website yet.
well, I believe that is due to come, but obviously there was a redacted
Yeah, so
version that was given to yourself, and obviously
but nothing from KCC.
okay,
so
I can push that. That's it,
Your understanding is it will be there,
yeah,
and our position obviously can be relying on KCC
Yeah.
in that context if that's what councillors want to do.
yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else want to raise points on that?
You? No?
I've got a question.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of any members of the public? No? Any other councillors got questions?
Not at this stage.
Yeah, Paul.
I just had a couple. Looking through the overall document, and I looked through it last time, it doesn't seem to have changed. I think it's 7.3 and 7.4 refers to the fact that there are, the bus service only amounts to 3 buses a day. It's factually incorrect. I thought that was pointed out. Second point is, I think it's a typo that hasn't been corrected, and it implies that the family who live there support the fact that the bus stop should be there rather than not. It's probably worth checking that,
Yeah.
because it's exactly the same as before. The other question I've got, which interests me, in looking at the site plan, it's a sizable site.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to work out why. Is there a reason why you can't use the existing driveway to look at different parts of that location for this building? I'm trying to work out, obviously what you've provided is not necessarily photographic evidence. I have looked on Google and what have you. The trouble is some of the canopies sort of splay over and you can't see it very easily. And I'm trying to think, well, why? Because I'm picking up the fact that security is quite an important issue.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, well, why put it right near the front, open up another road, and I have a question about that anyhow, maybe later on, when you could put it in a more secure location using the existing driveway, and therefore not needing an additional driveway onto a road that you might not think is very busy, but an awful lot of us who live around here realise that it is getting increasingly busy.
Yeah.
The traffic flow there is significant. And I'm just a bit puzzled why other options haven't been explored for a considerable building that's obviously been built for secure reasons, not using the existing entrance.
So
Do you want to comment on that?
yeah, so at the bottom of the driveway, obviously there's an annex area, and right behind that there's a protected oak tree, and the canopy section pretty much covers around 60% of the bottom part of the ground for root protection and obviously branch protection.
Yeah.
And obviously off of the driveway there is no way that you could put a garage that wouldn't be an eyesore to the neighbours around the house and wouldn't cause so much economical damage to the area. There's a part in the rear far corner that we could use, but then again, right on the back of it is one of our neighbours' ponds, so obviously you have the problem that there could be damage to the pond area, and then obviously you have to put a new driveway around the back of the premises to that corner at the same time. So although the site is quite large, the places that you could put a garage are actually very limited when you try not to knock on the effects of everyone else or everything else around the surrounding area.
And the pond is a good point. I mean, there are a lot of those types of ponds, dew ponds and so on the island here. This garage is being proposed to be built right next to one.
It'll be still quite away from it. It's actually further away than it would look on the map, if that makes sense. So it's if we put it in the back corner, it's closer to our neighbour's one. It's more obviously from how they've designed the drawing, which actually went back as a note for them. It's obviously the driveway makes it look like it's going to appear closer to it, because actually the garage will necessarily actually into the far corner.
Okay, that's all I've got at the moment.
And obviously you mentioned about the app for the, was it yourself you mentioned about displays? So one of the reasons why I asked for the application to be removed the last time was because actually I needed to go to the highways and say, I actually agree, the road is actually very busy, and actually it's generally not noted as much that it is busy, but actually the driveway access that 70% of the houses have on that part of the road actually don't conform to the rules and regulations of what needs to be for that visibility. The access for the other garage, which is only going to have very limited use, is a much better visibility display for it, and obviously the highways, or Matt Hogan from Highways actually agreed with that, and that's the reason why we've got the positive planning application from it.
Okay, I mean I take your point that some other properties might not be like that, but from my opinion, my interpretation is that just because other properties haven't conformed doesn't mean The other thing is that there is and you'll have to remind me of this, what's the maximum height for a front fence on the roadside? There is a you probably know this actually, what the height is yet. So I'm concerned that if it's supposed to be a high security area, what size fence is going up there? Have I missed that on the application, or is that?
I think it hasn't been discussed in there.
Okay, but I think you'll find that
there's no fences.
We've had.
There's no fences being installed on the front of it, so obviously the access.
So it's just going to be a gate.
There'll be a gate, and obviously it's got the hedges that it's going to be there.
Okay, but if it's going to be a high security, then what's preventing people just walking around through the hedge? I just raise it because we have had the issue before in the village where people have put up fencing adjacent to the highway, and there is a maximum level that's being exceeded.
They're not supposed to in the built-up area. They're not supposed to go above. Excuse me, a bit croaky. I believe they're not supposed to go above 5 foot.
As far as I'm aware, and Andy would be the one that would guide me, we're not putting fences up. Obviously, if you were to jump over the gate or the surrounding bit to the gate that's actually at the moment, the security devices on the plan would be there for that.
I believe it's 4 foot. Okay.
4 foot.
We're not trying to keep people out. You see, the reason for the security is obviously what's why.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. My question, stroke uncertainty. I was looking on Street View, which of course is out of date. I mean, it's about 5-6 years ago they did it, and I think probably within that time, not only has your property been modified quite a bit, but the names have all been changed along there when Lordings was sold off in bits. But so far as I can make out by matching the buildings along there, Anchor Barn, as it was and is now, has got a gate, and your property seems to show another gate just down the hill from Anchor Barn's gate. And I'm wondering why that isn't where you need to get in. Has in fact that gate have they both gone over to the neighbours and you don't have it anymore, or has it disappeared, or what?
So you're going off the Street View, so essentially where the Lord is this one next, that's the access to the house that's behind.
So it's been actually taken over for a different use, whether it was part of your property earlier on, it isn't anymore, is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, because it actually got picked up in...
I wondered if it had been absorbed by one of the other properties. Okay, that's helpful. So we know where we stand with KCC, and we'll make it clear that councillors, depending on what our decision is, if necessary, that we obviously rely on that.
Yeah.
The other thing is that looking ahead and knowing past decisions by the parish council, we might, when we come to our consideration in the meeting, be concerned about the future of the building that you would like to build. If you're given permission by Ashford, years ahead, perhaps, after you've decided to, you sell up, you move on, whatever, 10, 20 years time, there are issues in the village at times where buildings that were not built for residential become residential.
Yeah.
And therefore, councillors, I'm just looking ahead, councillors may want to, if they are supportive, urge Ashford to make sure that there are strong conditions on that.
Yeah,
therefore, I think that should be fair, in front of you. That this
gone
is very
through
much as a
right.
garage, not as a whatever in future years.
Yeah, they have asked, or Matt asked in the meetings that I had with him, obviously, would I object on behalf of the owners to having, and I said no, there was.
Okay. So they're thinking the
we're,
same.
we're happy to have any condition put on it, so
Okay.
obviously
All
not
right.
that.
Understand. Anyone else got anything to
No.
add there? No. Good. Okay, that's the planning applications. Now we have a PCSO, I guess, or a PC, I'm not sure.
Yes, PCSOs. Yeah.
Okay, so you are a colleague of PCSO Kate Richards.
That's it, yes.
Okay, well, welcome to our meeting. Thank you for coming.
No, thank you. Firstly, apologies for being a bit late. It's a bit further out than I used to remember. So, obviously, I'm not Kate. I've just popped along in her absence. Just obviously to just check in with yourselves.
Thank
Want to
you.
make sure you're okay. See if you've got any concerns or issues to raise. And two, just to give you a quick update on sort of crime trends that are happening in the rural areas. Obviously, the first one, as you've all noticed, the cost of fuel prices has risen dramatically. So we are noticing an increase in fuel thefts. Unfortunately, with the price rising, so do the criminals come out and tend to target such items. So fuel theft is the main crime in rural areas at the moment. And then secondly, to go with that is theft of number plates. They're basically stealing the number plates to obviously then put onto their vehicles to conceal them, or also using their vehicles to fuel up at fuel stations and then driving off without paying. So that is the two main crime trends that are taking place. So I will urge you, obviously I know a lot of people out here will have heating oil, obviously check your tanks regularly, try and put precautions in place if possible. Perhaps not order so much at a time. I know it's difficult because with the cost going up, you want to fill it up at a reasonable rate prior to it going up. But if you are doing that, keep an eye on it. Make sure you know what you've got in there. Anything you can do to try and stop people from taking it. We recommend sort of growing hedges around it. Just anything you can do. And then secondly, obviously, when you're going out to your car, just have a quick check of your number plates. It takes 10 seconds just to walk around your car, make sure both number plates are there before you obviously drive off. And if there is any issues, if you do see anyone acting sus, anyone loitering around, sort of outbuildings or substantial properties that you do have out here, if you do see anyone on the grounds or anyone just acting suspicious in the area, obviously give us a call to let us know straight away so we can try and obviously come out and stop these people before they can target you.
Good. Okay. Thank you for that. Does anyone have things that they want to say? I didn't get your name at the beginning.
Oliver Welch.
Oh, Oliver.
Yes, I used to come here years ago.
You are Oliver, who used to be here
That's
years
it,
back.
that's me, yeah. I'm on
You're
your
back
way
again.
Welcome back again.
Thank you.
Anyone have questions or points for Oliver?
I just wonder whether Oliver has been made aware that there's been these powered scooters, about up to three of them at any one time, whizzing up and down the street and up Forge Meads, which are illegal on public roads, aren't they?
They are correct. It's difficult at the moment. We're still looking into legislation, so it has been raised at chief officer level in relation to these scooters, because unfortunately they came out probably just before Christmas time. They were the hit toy at Christmas for people to buy their kids, grandkids, etc. And unfortunately, companies sold them without telling people the legislation, without going into the legislation, and unfortunately perhaps without Kent Police getting onto it quick enough and setting our own legislation in place. So we do conduct operations, perhaps not out here, we do in certainly Ashford Town Centre. We have seized a number of these scooters that are riding around the roads because, as you say, they are illegal. They don't have tax, they don't have insurance, which they should have to be on a public road. They are treated exactly the same as a car, so they do need all these things. It is something that I can address. I can speak to Kate, and so we can look at perhaps branching further afield when we're conducting these operations to try and target more people. If you know where they're coming from, who's on them, we can certainly obviously pop around and knock on the door.
Where they're coming from, but not exactly who's on them. I haven't seen them lately, I must admit, but my great concern is not just the kids themselves, but they come down the road wearing dark clothing, late in the evening, and suddenly whiz out into the main road. I mean, the poor driver could not got a chance.
No, exactly. There has been incidents where accidents have occurred, where people have been hit on them, and like I said, as much as we want to get them off the road, we'd also be just as keen to nip it in the bud, knock on someone's door and say, look, you shouldn't have this, don't take it on the road, because ultimately it could be saving their life.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, and just one little point from me in case you didn't notice it as you drove by, the village does have a pub again since last Friday.
Okay.
So from the point of view of potential for various things, yes, it is there, it is open, so far it's flourishing, which is very good news.
It's good for the village.
But it is great for the village, but it is an extra sort of point of presence of where things can happen.
Yeah, of course. Not a problem, I'll feed that back, obviously make sure that we're aware and we've got it on our radar as well.
It's fully CCTV, he says.
Perfect. I'm sure our licensing officer will be aware of it anyway.
Oh yeah, that side of it's all sorted.
So, yeah, that's fine.
It's just a question that things can go on at pubs. Hopefully not ours, but you never know.
No, of course. Not a problem.
Okay, anything else for Oliver? Otherwise, we're happy that you came. I know that the new arrangement that's come down from the ACC is an attendance every 3 months, which is good. And so we'll tick you off for June.
Perfect, yeah, no problem.
Okay,
Check.
thank you very much. If you want to go back to your view.
No, thank you. Cheers, thank you.
Right, good night. Okay, does anyone else have anything they want to raise in the public session?
Yes.
Oh, Miriam.
Well, okay, so obviously my email to the clerk appears on the agenda under correspondence 8A, and then we've got under the planning applications 5A, the stop flow planning application. I suppose they're both interlinked really. So following on from the last parish council meeting where the issue was raised but not a lot of information was forthcoming. On just one point of information, if you remember, I was concerned about my understanding of who 5 and how that evolved during the plan. I did contact Simon Kohler.
Sorry, I didn't catch that properly, Miriam. Your my something about point 5
so just for
part of the plan.
clarity, sorry, which bit didn't you understand?
The last bit you said before I
Right,
interrupted
okay,
you.
so just for a point of information, at the last parish council meeting, we had some discussion about who 5, the policy, and how it
Oh,
evolved in the local
HOU5.
plan.
Now I understand.
Yeah.
HOU5, yes.
And I did contact Simon Cole because I was concerned I had misunderstood that, but no, I actually hadn't. Wittersham was always included in HOU5. It wasn't added at a later time. It was always there. So that point should be understood. So really going back to trying to get some clarity now on what is actually happening with this planning application. At the last parish council meeting, we both seemed to understand that it was going to the June meeting, and then it didn't appear on the agenda. I have been told that it is going to the July meeting, but Councillor Burgess, who is the chair of the planning committee, seems to think that I know more than him, which is a little concerning. So perhaps we could have some clarity, please, because there are obviously a lot of people in the village objecting, and we were preparing to go tomorrow to speak on the matter, and now it's deferred, and we've got no idea why it's been deferred. So I think the village ought to be able to understand. And so we've got Councillor Burgess here. I think the first thing we would like to try and understand is why the application, when we were told it was going to the June meeting, it's deferred to the July one. Can Councillor Burgess give us an answer?
All right, well, before Councillor Burgess comments, pointing this at the parish council obviously is the wrong place, but I know that, you know, we're quite happy to hear from you, but the parish council is absolutely as unsighted as anybody else as to when the borough council puts things on the agenda. I had, like you, had the kind of expectation with no particular reason behind it for why it would go to June. And I heard, you know, not long ago, like you did, it didn't turn up on the agenda. That was last week, wasn't it? So, you know, it is as it is. As far as your point with Simon Cole on HOU5, I haven't got the documents in front of me, and I doubt he has now without a lot of searching. But the first version of the plan came to this council. I was on this council then, and we were told in the plan that any growth in Wittersham would be from infill. That is HOU3 as it was, and then HOU3A. HOU5 was added after we went back and made representations that we felt infill was insufficient. Now, I was here at the time. My recollection is rather different from Simon Cole. He's a busy man as head of planning in Ashford. I'm only having to focus on Wittersham. But, you know, let's just leave that. There's no point arguing over it now.
But it is an important point that
Well,
the option was there.
It's a point of not great importance now, to be honest. We've got
Well, it is in terms of what the plan was going to allow.
We've got a planning application which will or will not, I mean, we think it will go to the planning committee. I mean, all this is a bit uncertain. You've quoted me in your note as confirming last time that it would go to the planning committee, and I don't think I did. I confirmed it was my understanding that Councillor Burgess was considering putting it to the planning committee, and as far as we know that has happened. But in a way, this is all, you know, third hand.
Well,
we're not doing anything with the planning committee. The officers will form the agenda at ABC when they're ready, and it will pop up and the chairman of the committee will chair it. I mean, technically, let's just be clear about this, technically, the agenda for tonight is not my agenda, it's the clerk's. She discusses it with me, but she's got the responsibility for the agenda, and it works the same way in ABC. Officers run the organisation, councillors give policy decisions, and certainly big
I
decisions.
understand that, but they would consult the chairman of the planning committee, the officer would meet with the chairman to discuss the agenda. I mean, I listened to the last planning committee, it went on until after 11 o'clock at night. I mean, it was unbelievable. You know, they're making decisions so late on. I expect the chairman would want to see that the agenda is not so long, that the members are there. You know, one person was going to miss his last train, someone had to leave. It wasn't ideal. But, you know, members of the public had come to speak and arriving at 7 o'clock, and they weren't heard until 20 to 11. So, you know, the chairman must manage the agenda. So, I mean, we do have the chairman here, he is our ward member.
Sure.
If he has elevated it, and we understand from his communications with us that he indeed has elevated it to the committee, if he comes to these parish council meetings, it's to address issues for the borough council. Otherwise, what's the point of him coming here if he doesn't answer questions that we might have? And I would have thought the parish council would be interested to know why it's actually been delayed. It's an interesting question.
Let me be clear, I'm not in the least interested why it's been delayed. That's not for me.
Well,
I am as impatient as you are to see it get to the planning committee.
Well, I'm not
but
impatient
why
for it
it
to get to the
hasn't
planning
is not a matter for me, and to be honest, it's not really a matter for you. This is Ashford Borough Council's business and they will pursue it. Now, do you have any things that you'd like to add for Miriam?
Well, I was as surprised as anyone to see that it wasn't on tomorrow's agenda.
Right, okay.
I do not see the agenda before you do, of any planning committee or any other committee until it's published. So I don't know that it's going to be on the July one, and I will know when it's on the July one when it's published, same time as you or any other member of the public will know.
So I'm not correct then in my understanding that you would have a pre-meeting with officers?
We have I have a pre-meeting with officers after the agenda has been published.
Okay.
And it's definitely in the Constitution that that's what it's got to be, after the agenda has been published. So we can then discuss the finite of administration. Now, as for going on to 11:15, was not my wish. You may remember, I can't remember whether you were there, where you wasn't online, but at 10:30 I said to the committee, do you want to stop now? Because they could have done at the end of that next to last item on the agenda. And they all said, no, let's get on with it, finish it. So that was their decision, not mine. Secondly, on the length of the meetings, well, I mean, I ask you, you come to here. Can you determine exactly when these meetings are going to finish? Because you've got 5 items on the agenda, doesn't make it a long or a short one. You can have a guess at it of what the feeling would be on 1 or 2 of these things. And when we have a colossal agenda, such as Court Lodge when it comes up, maybe this year, maybe next year, there will be a separate meeting for that, just as the same was for Chilmington, which you may remember. Because it's obviously not going to be enough time to do anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I understand all those points, but I'm just saying from a member of the public's point of view, if I'd come to speak at that planning committee as the gentleman who bought the garage site in Smarden, and it's not until 11 o'clock that you get up and speak, having sat there for 4 hours, it's pretty difficult. I think I'd be pretty peeved if that was me. I'm just making the point that the officers maybe have looked at that, and that the reason is that they need to manage the committee better in terms of not having so many items for the members. I've got no complaint with the members because they were right, because they were empathetic with the guy who'd sat there. But I mean, it was actually the council solicitor who reminded you that you can't actually go past 10:30 without a decision. That's part of
the agenda,
the Constitution. So, no issue with the members. I'm just making the point that is possibly the reason
I think
why
this isn't really the forum.
No, it's not. It's not. But we're missing the point. So the point I'm trying to make.
Hold on. It isn't the forum for you to be criticising the way Ashford runs its business. Whether you can criticise Ashford with Ashford or not, I mean, it really isn't the place at the parish council. And we've heard from the borough councillor the answer to your first point, which is that he knows no more about the agenda than you do until it's published.
Okay, so the second point then.
Please do.
So this application could be decided by the officer. So just like the one in Poplar Farm, the officer, because it's less than 50 houses, has been given delegated powers to decide that. But in this case, it's going, am I correct in understanding that it is going to the planning committee because you have asked for it to go to the planning committee, because that's what you told me, that you're doing this to support the parish council. So is that correct? I mean, I think we should understand whether that's correct or not.
One of the reasons for calling it in, and the main reason, is because of this controversy that is obvious right here at this moment. And let a proper skilled planning committee decide the decision without sort of having to be, chewed over by parish councillors and people sending emails and God knows what like. So, yes, I did say I support the parish council in their decision, but that wasn't the main reason for calling it in. People have assumed a hell of a lot, actually, in the past 3 or 4 months. I've never denied anything that's true, but I've basically ignored all the, to be absolutely truthful, the gossipy bits, the bits that get repeated, and I've learned the lesson myself now. But that's beside the point. that is the situation with this one. It could be that the officers might think, and it probably is one of the reasons why it's been slightly delayed, because they've got to write a report, a better report for this application than they would if it was a delegated one. This is perfectly true, so it could take a little bit longer, but it is a better report, in my opinion.
Well, it has to be more detailed, doesn't it,
Quite,
to explain it to the members,
Yeah.
the thinking. You know, so I mean, I'm sure, I have no doubt that the officer's report will be thorough and will examine the policy. So at least we have cleared that up, that in fact, that you believe that the members would be more skilled at, well, that's your view, that the members would be more skilled than the officers at actually making a decision as to, you know, what should happen with that fee.
I think to clarify a point you were cutting away at earlier, Miriam, matters are delegated to the planning officer if two things happen. One is that one of them is a whole series of things which includes less than 50 houses, you correctly quoted, that's gone up from 10 houses a bit ago. And the second one is if it isn't called into the planning committee. Any planning application could be called into the planning committee in certain circumstances, such as the ward councillor wishes to do it, committee member wishes to do it, portfolio holder wishes to do it, head of planning wishes to do it.
No, that's not right. That's not right.
And as far as planning committee members are concerned, which is what we're talking about, I've looked up the constitution of the Borough Council, and it says that a delegated decision should not, delegated if it's not elevated, should not be elevated to the planning committee on any ground other than that you consider the matter raises issues of significant local importance. Now, if anybody has been saying that this particular planning application has been going back and forth one way or another for 7 years, including its predecessors, is not, well, anyway, if anyone's been saying it raises issues of significant local importance, it's you. I mean, we here on the parish council do
Mr. Chair, can I just raise a point, please? You know, this is very much Ashford Borough Council's situation. I think we've had a very good answer from both Borough Council and you. We've got a really full agenda. I don't want to be here at 10 to 11 tonight. Okay, there are some really important things on here. I thank you for bringing the fact that we don't know until the agenda's out, as the Borough Council doesn't. We can't really affect that. All we can do is to keep our eyes on it and respond when the agenda does come out. There's nothing more we can do here, and I just don't think this is the right venue to debate the whys and wherefores of whether Ashford Borough Council are efficient or not. It's not the right. Miriam, you've made the point. It's not the right time now. We can't do anything about it.
Yeah, but it is an important thing. And
Stocks Road is a very important thing, right? And it's not. You'll never convince me that the majority of the village don't want homes for their children in the future. Okay, so let's just agree to disagree on that, because you and I both. Now the fact of the matter is, as parish councillors, we have a lot to do. You need to take the points that have been made, and they've been made well. And if you've got to take it further with Ashford Borough Council, I wish you well. It's not the right.
I'm not wishing. I'm wishing to ask the chairman something about.
Well, we're going round in circles here, Miriam.
No, we're not.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to vote. Look, we have a constitution here ourselves.
Let's settle down, please. We've covered the points you've raised so far, Miriam, as well as we're going to. Are there any different points that you still want to raise?
You've got the time issue.
I know we have. Go on.
3 minutes per member of the parish of the public.
But if we could get some straight answers in the first place, we might.
Miriam, ask the question, otherwise
I sent an email to the clerk.
Indeed.
It had some clear questions in it.
Indeed.
I'm entitled to an answer to those questions. You chose not to answer my email. You said it can go on the agenda.
Indeed.
I now come to the parish council meeting and you are refusing to allow me to ask my questions. That is not fair.
We're giving you reasonable.
I think the record will clearly show, the recording will show, we have not refused to give you airtime. We have not refused to let you ask questions. You've had 23 minutes. You've had 23 minutes now, Miriam.
No, I have haven't had to, if you'd have allowed me to speak for 23 minutes, we have the chairman interrupting, so I'm losing my train
Have you
of
got
thought
any
on what
more
I'm trying to
points
say.
to raise?
I've got lots of points I would like to raise.
Raise the next one and we'll see how we get on.
Right, so the parish council say that this is a really important application
And you
of
do.
significant interest, therefore it's going to the committee. Can
No,
the parish council...
No.
We
So can
to
the
the
parish
council.
council...
we haven't said that.
We
Well,
haven't
then-
said that.
Why would you not then push for the Poplar Farm one to go to the committee?
It's not for me to push for anything to go to the
So
committee.
you didn't have any conversations with Councillor Burgess about going to committee?
I heard from Councillor Burgess, as I confirmed to you a month ago, that I thought he was considering doing that. And what I heard from Councillor Burgess was, if I take it to the committee, am I right in assuming that you would come and speak at the committee? And I said, if I need to, obviously it's up to councillors and all the rest of it, yes. That was the discussion we had. As far as the committee is concerned, it is not, it's above my pay grade, as the saying goes.
So
It
you're
is
going to
not
have
for
a...
me whether it goes to the committee. But if it does, that's Ashford's business.
But it is your decision as a council as to whether you will speak at that committee, and you've already said to Councillor Burgess
Well,
yes before
If
it's
you're
been
saying,
discussed.
if you're saying, well, we ought to say, well, when it goes to the committee, we won't speak to it. That is a decision for us, by the way, and not a decision
But that's
for
the
you.
decision you made
But
last
that is
time.
a decision that we're coming up to at 5E.
Yeah, and that's what I said. I was to speak to that and to my email, because obviously this coming on here, this is a big decision for the parish council, because in fact only 4 out of the 7 parish councillors actually support the decision.
The parish council supports the
Yeah,
decision,
but only
Miriam.
4 out of 7 actually support.
Miriam,
That's democracy, Miriam.
Constitutional.
When I was here last time and we took a vote
We are
on
fed
it,
up with this,
it
Miriam.
was 6 out of 7 supported and I abstained.
No,
And I remember that
it's
clearly.
still a majority. I'm sorry, that's wrong.
It's a
Miriam,
majority.
Miriam,
Stop
if-
saying
4 out of
everything
7.
is
Mr.
wrong.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to
Mr.
propose we
Chairman,
suspend
can we-
the public session.
We'll adjourn the public session. Thank you very much. Let me just, you finished, Miriam. Let me just say in passing that most legislation in this country on your basis wouldn't happen because it's very rarely unanimous. Just bear in mind that Parliament works on a majority
I
of one.
understand that.
We're done. Public session's finished. Just bear in mind. Now, let us move on. Thank you for your points, Miriam. I'm sorry that we've spent a lot of time going on about Ashford Borough Council rather than trying to address your points. We're now back on the agenda. It's a council meeting now, so I will ask everyone else to remain silent, apart from councillors. And my apologies to members of the public who found the shouting match somewhat unpalatable. Okay. So the first thing then is to confirm the minutes of the meeting on the 10th of May. Does anybody wish to make any points on them?
No.
Any, so no points. Everyone happy that I signed them?
Yes.
Thank you. Good, thank you very much. Agenda back, there we go. Matters arising is the Jubilee mugs. The Jubilee mugs were given to the school children. I went last Friday and presented them. I paid tribute to Miriam, whose idea it was that we should give Jubilee mugs. It was a good idea. The parish council, having heard it suggested last time, took it up straight away. There is an example of the mug on the front there. It was given out in a box to each child. I went and presented them to the school council, which is 2 children elected from each class, and then the rest were given out by the teachers Friday afternoon before they went home. We have heard from the head teacher afterwards. She wasn't available at the time because she had an emergency issue to deal with. She said, please pass on how well received it all was. The rest of the staff were glowing about it. The mugs were lovely, a great choice. The children carried them home with pride. So I think, Miriam, it was a good idea of yours. Thank you very much. And it went really well. Good. Next thing there are planning applications. So first off is Pear Tree Cottage. We've heard a bit about that. Who wants to talk to Pear Tree Cottage?
No.
No one wants to talk to it in any way?
I
Okay.
just find it perfectly acceptable. There are no complaints from neighbours or comments and what have you. It's been well put together. It's retrospective, and the applicant didn't realise in the first place that it's now sorted. And I think that
So
No,
no,
it's
you
not.
were-
Pear Tree Cottage we did have.
we had the thing from the neighbour.
yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, but there was what I'm saying is that in the balance of things, I can't see any major objections to it. Have I missed an objection?
From the neighbour.
We sent that in there.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I thought that was from the applicant.
No. That's from the neighbour. There's an email that came with the photograph. You've only got the second page.
Okay,
Let
so
me
I've only
show you-
seen this then.
I'll show you
Beg
the
your pardon.
email, Paul.
I didn't realise it was the.
Let me show you. I've got it here somewhere. Here we are. That's the email.
Okay, thank you.
Right, does anyone else want to comment while Paul is reading?
I mean, looking at the application, I would have supported it. But looking at these pictures, I think that's totally unacceptable. From the neighbouring point of view, how you can have something that high? No.
Next to the fence?
Yeah.
Leslie?
Well, the only thing I would ask is at what angle that photograph was taken.
Well,
Where
we've
it was
got one.
taken from.
Oh, I see what you mean, yes.
I mean, is the elevation actually above the fence?
I thought it was about right because we don't see the surface. If it was above, we'd be looking down on
No,
the surface.
that's right.
wouldn't we?
Sorry, are you sure they're not my photos?
No, I think they're the neighbours' photos.
Because I sent 13 photos in. Is it right if I look? Because
Yeah.
I've got them on the phone too.
Give him yours, Paul.
No, it's all right.
No.
Yes, of course.
This came in from the neighbour.
Oh no, that's next door. Yeah. Yeah, that's next door. But this isn't the top of the thing, this is the handrail.
The handrail
That's the
on
handrail,
your-
yeah. Yes.
This is their fence.
This is their fence, yes.
So they look out onto.
Yeah, he's moved all the foliage out to see the handrail. That is from his side.
Okay. This is a handrail.
Does that make a difference
What's the other one?
to what we just said?
So I can see it. Yeah, but the deck is just, you can see
Yes,
the
I have,
deck
yeah.
itself.
I didn't think.
And then the handrail above it, which is,
I think the problem with that is that it's a bit disingenuous. You almost need a photograph sitting on your deck,
Yeah.
looking down into their garden.
You can't see anything from the...
I have sent 13 photos in.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, to make the point on that, I'm not convinced the angle of this is correct.
we're reasonably level with the deck if you think about it, because
Yeah.
otherwise you would see more of the surface or less of it.
And if I was sitting in the garden this side of the fence, my head height would be lower than, I don't know how high the fence is, okay, but I'm assuming that it's going to be, let's say 6 foot,
Yeah.
right? So if I was sitting down,
Here's a 2 metre fence.
it's 2 metre fence, right? So if you're sitting down, they wouldn't be able to see your deck.
No.
And you wouldn't be able to see
That's
them.
how I
Well,
assessed
but
it.
remember someone standing on the deck is another 6 foot tall.
You still can't see.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. Without being able to see that, I don't see how we can make a judgment call on it, because
You're more than welcome to come round and have a look.
You can't see anything.
You honestly are more than welcome to come round and have a look.
And the neighbours
Okay,
themselves...
we're in the council
Yeah.
session now. I know you were
sorry,
asking.
I beg your pardon. I did ask the question. I think it's okay. So my view on this now,
Okay.
no, that is. I find it very difficult.
We'll take a vote on
I
that.
think we need to.
So, Sue's made a point. Leslie, did you have a point to make?
No.
No. Colin?
No, I didn't have a point out. I felt reasonably safe with it from the pictures I saw.
Okay. My side is I'm concerned by it. I think that it is rather, personally, I think that it is rather higher than I would have expected the parish council, the borough council to accept. But ultimately, of course, it's their decision. All we're talking about, as always, to remind members of the public, is whether we support or object.
Yes.
We don't take the actual decision. So I am concerned by that. So can we say who's in favour of supporting the application?
At this point in time, I am.
Others? Colin is in support of you. Support Paul? Who's, while Paul's thinking about it, who's objecting to the application? I am. Sue is.
I don't know without seeing
You're
it.
uncertain. At the minute, we're 2 object, 1 support, and 2 hovering on abstain.
I think that now we know what we know. Well, now I know what I know. Sorry, all right. I think I would object to it.
Okay.
But with making the point that I can't see how we can make a decision.
Okay.
I can't see how I can make a decision because I don't feel I've got all the pieces of the puzzle.
Okay.
And I think that maybe what we should do is have a site visit and actually see it for ourselves. Is that possible?
We've not got much time.
I've asked for an extension until tonight
Okay.
because it was asked for, you know, it was way back in June. So
I
I've
think-
asked for an extension.
I think then, Paul, the situation we're in, weighing it up or adding it up, is that even if you supported, and I know you've gone from object, even if you supported, it would be 2-2, and it would be my casting decision, which would be to object.
Well, I'll support it and pass it over to you. In the great principle of Simon Cowell, the chairman votes on it.
So actually, we will object. Bear in mind that it's not a decision, it'll be up to the Borough Council to actually decide. And it will be a delegated decision, so it will almost...
Can I ask a question on that? I know everyone said we've asked an extension. And the likelihood is probably the answer is no, but can we not ask for another extension? At least ask.
You're more than welcome to come round. I haven't raised it,
But then-
it's on...
No.
If we did that, then we'd have to have another council meeting to make the decision. So we're talking about another 7-10 days.
I think bearing in mind that we're not actually the
Can we do
decision
that
maker,
remotely?
I think that we're not allowed to.
Okay.
Bearing in mind that we're not taking the actual decision, that I think that it is not sufficiently critical. I understand it's important to the applicant, but I don't think, and to the objector, but I don't think it's sufficiently critical.
Well, I'll be guided by you then.
We can comment, we can do narrative,
rather than
which is
support
that
object.
which is that Yvonne can write a piece saying councillors were in different views. There's a question as to how much visible it is. There are reasons felt to object. There are some councillors in support, and that and we were unable, because of the timing, to arrange a site visit once that became clear.
Would it be appropriate to just in that commentary put a request that an officer visits and sees for themselves? Because surely what we're maybe not being able to get an extension to do because we can't see. Okay, if an officer if a planning officer makes that visit and can see for themselves and see those photographs and see the actual visibility lines, then that's going to be the fairest way of doing it.
That used to be normal until COVID, and I assume it should be normal again.
Well, it will be normal again.
Once upon a
Yeah,
time.
well, I appreciate that they might not be overburdened with coachloads of planning officers, but at least we put the request in.
Yeah, I think
that's a reasonable.
Okay, that can be put together then. I think that is an approach. I mean, it is a difficult one. And I think the other thing is, and I understand how it came to this, but retrospectives are always the absolute worst. They're the pits. Okay, Underhill, Orchard, Rye Road, the shed. Who wants to speak to that first? Okay, well I will. I don't personally see any problems with it. Does anybody?
No.
No.
So are we all happy about supporting that what we are?
Yes.
Yes.
Hurst House, good night, thank you for coming. Hurst House in Budds Lane and the photovoltaic panels. Does anyone want to speak to that?
I don't see a problem.
Personally, I'm a supporter of PV.
Yeah.
I don't like solar farms, but I think that this is that hybrid where it is in the garden. We've supported one of them years and years ago down near you at Island Barn, and it seems to me as long as it's not in your face, then there's no reason, obviously, against.
Yeah.
So are we all in support
Yes,
of that?
yes.
We are. Okay. Thanks very much for coming.
Thank
Good
you.
night. And the last one is Hope Farmhouse. This is slightly more complicated because of questions over sort of associated issues and conditions. Who wants to start us off on that?
If the confirmation comes in from KCC that they are given permission, then that's the end of the matter.
And that we suggest, I think, that there should be a strong condition to make it, whether from KCC or us or both,
Yes.
Ashford or both, that it should definitely only be for associated use and not residential, either as an annex or as a separate building.
I would totally support that.
Separate dwelling, I mean. Okay. Other people adding to that?
I have a concern about the additional entry onto the main road and the size of that building right next to the main road like that. I think most people going by would assume it was another house or what have you. The angle of you can't see the sort of the bays of the garage from the end of the way it's designed like that, and I'm just not convinced that that's going to add to the area from a planning point. And again, it's not this aesthetic thing I'm looking at. It's the whole planning issue. I'm not convinced that KCC Highways have really thought this through. Personally, I remain to be convinced that the new splays, if we can call them that, are going to be adequate. And I think the traffic and certainly the frequency of the bus that was put in print is wrong. So the application is technically incorrect.
Sure.
And for all those reasons, I'm concerned.
And what about Sue?
Well, I think Paul's absolutely right. And the application says it's on a rural lane. It isn't. It's a B road. And light traffic, well, that's unbelievable.
Okay.
And I've got concerns about the bus stop. And the school bus goes down there and it will stop at various places.
Sure. Okay. Leslie?
There was Sue and Paul.
Okay. So that's actually objecting. Okay. And I think then, Yvonne, my suggestion would be that it's object, but if the Borough Council is minded to consent based on KCC, if indeed they support, then we would urge that there's a condition put on the use of the building. In other words, we try and have a cake and eat it. I can't think who said that recently.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's an object anyway. Right, thank you. Stocks Road planning application. The fundamental point here is that if or when the planning application does go to the committee, which we will find out when it gets on the agenda, to agree that I should speak to that on the PC's behalf when it comes up. That's the question for us. I think that the question that Miriam wanted to put but didn't quite get to in the public session was, how should I be speaking to the application when we were not unanimous? And the answer is, of course, supporting the parish council's position, which is, you know, how everything works with government, county, borough and everybody else.
What's the point of a vote?
Pardon?
I didn't hear any councillors speak then. No. Okay. So what is our view on this? The item on the agenda to agree that I should speak on the PC's behalf if or when it turns up at the committee.
Well, you are the obvious person to speak on our behalf.
Indeed.
So
Yes.
I mean,
I'm sure
we
that
have
makes
put
an
in
issue.
I can't remember what it said at the time, but we have put in, actually, because it came back to us at least another once or twice. We have actually said in some detail to the portal, as it were, what we thought. Now, I do know that if or when this happens, the rules have been changed now from the way that we used to hear about it, with a 3-minute opportunity to speak. That no longer applies. It is now a 400-word submission that has to be submitted in advance. It can then be read to the committee, and the clerks of the committee will check that the reading is the same as what was sent in. In other words, it's been pretty much denatured. Pretty much neutered, or denatured. But that's the rules, that's what they've laid down. It's quite clear in the agendas now, and that's what it will have to be. Finding 400 words which encapsulate our position, which we have after all spent hours on in the past, over many years, before this application, this exact application and the current one. Okay.
I think the position is very clear that it was a majority decision at the end of the day, and the chairman was right to make that thing, irrespective of who else voted for another matter.
Indeed. And in fact, in terms of sweeping things up, whilst it was Leslie who, at that time, I think, actually abstained in one case, may have even objected, but you were very keen to get the sewage mentioned, and we specifically mentioned it. So that was an example. Okay. So we've agreed that, have we?
Yep.
Yeah, good. Next one is to discuss and agree where to plant Platinum Jubilee Quercus rubber, which is an ordinary British or European oak. A bare root sapling, I gather it's very tiny. I gather it's in a flower pot. Supplied to us as part of the Queen's Green County Initiative, and also to decide on the ceremony and consider a plaque. Now, the first thing is to think about where to put it. Have you had a reply from your interrogation of our tree warden?
If I may interrupt, my apologies.
You're going to go? Okay. I know you've had a hard day. We are still quorate, but we can't lose too many more.
Good night.
Good night, Leslie. Best wishes to Brian.
Best wishes to Brian.
Yes, our tree warden, Chris Teasdale, thought that the memorial garden would be a good place because that's where those sort of things are, or Coronation Field, because that's where the other oak trees are. However, it should, if it survives, be a big oak tree in years to come.
Yes, that's right, it will be.
So it needs to be carefully considered as to where we put it. My thought, which hasn't been popular, I have to admit, was to put it at the bottom of the cemetery, where we have cleared that area, where we can't actually bury people because it's too close to the watercourse. However, I felt that it might be safer there, and if it was in the middle, it had the room to grow to be a beautiful oak tree, and when you come into the cemetery, the path leads straight down to it, so it would be there. Well, that was my idea, and the chairman thought that if only we knew that the village green, the registered village green, would be something that we would have dealings with, be able to have more time with, to do things with, it could go there, but at the moment it belongs to Wittersham Borough Council, so I'm not sure that we
Unless they
consider
pass it
that.
to us. The benefit of it going there, I mean, just as it is quite sensible to put it on Coronation Field, note the word, it can also go next to Jubilee Field, which is where the village green is. You know, you can see some etymological logic in both of them, but where exactly a big oak will stand best. And Yvonne raises an important point. It does also need a degree of protection from vandalism.
Based on past experience, but not here, and you will know this, when 6 of the 7 oaks came down in Seven Oaks in the Great Storm, the local authority decided to replace them with, actually they're bigger than a flower pot, but they're about that tall. And unfortunately the local youth decided that football practice could take place with them, and they were all demolished. And then there was a national newspaper campaign, and they were replaced with 15-footers, and they are now thriving and what have you. Your point about it being safe, it needs to be in some sort of cage protected. You can't just be sitting there as a sort of a, you know, something that's just come out of the flower pot. And so I think location is really important,
Yes.
but also protection, proper protection, and what that should be is beyond my knowledge, but just to make that point. I think the cemetery actually is not a bad idea, really. And it can have
hasn't
the
got the right
appropriate
connotations, unfortunately. That's the big problem.
It's what?
It hasn't got the right connotations. That's the big problem. So it's
We've all
perfectly
got to
good
end
have
up
a
somewhere.
cemetery there. Yeah, well, we have indeed, yes.
You know.
Indeed we have.
I suppose also because I had a lot of time for the cemetery and
Yeah.
in the cemetery, I like it as a lovely, peaceful, come and sit and think place. But that's just...
I think if we had, I think you make a point. If the village green was actually finally part of our village, if that had happened, then I'd have gone for the village green. That's ambiguous at the moment. It might happen not tomorrow, but nearer. I personally, I think your idea of putting it properly, where it's sited, it's properly protected. There's a memorial plaque explaining it, so anyone in the cemetery who wandered down there could see the purpose of it. I think it's quite a good idea.
I haven't got to it this week, which I hoped to. I do need to chase, but not for the first time, Ashford. I mean, this went to the Chief Executive about last October time to say, are you interested in letting us have the village green off you? And they've just faffed about and it's just sitting in someone's pile. I have chased it since. Oh yeah, we'll definitely get on with it. Of course, it's died again. And I need to do that again. Unfortunately, I haven't seen the Chief Executive since I first raised it with her 8 months ago. And last time I took it up, it of course has percolated down in the organisation and just got buried. It's with lawyers at the minute, wouldn't you know? So I can try that again and see if we can free up the village green. The trouble is that we need to plant it soon, and even if they do suddenly say, oh yes, all right, you can have the village green, they will no doubt then spend months faffing about over finalising it.
I think that I'll propose that we plant it in the cemetery. It's properly protected and a plaque explaining its origins and its purpose put alongside it. I think we need to do something.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right for that?
Yeah.
Will it be, just one question, will it be all right, because you're saying get down towards the slope, will it be okay in the sense that we're going to put a very big heavy tree on the beginnings of the slope? It won't be that close. Okay.
No.
And obviously the roots in the direction of the watercourse will bend down anyway, they'll go down with it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're happy with that. Fair enough, so we'll go for the cemetery then. Right.
Ceremony? Yeah.
Oh yes, well obviously it would have a plaque or a plaque. And as for the ceremony, well,
I think I'd invite the Bishop of Dover personally.
I'm a bit lost on that. Well, we can certainly do that. Yes.
Yes, good idea.
If she's freed up from her present criticism of matters African. Right.
I think it would be a good return to Wittersham.
I wondered, I'm just thinking, things going around in my mind. We need the Bishop of Dover to come and consecrate's the word, consecrate the new area of the cemetery. Logically, that would be done a bit later on. But I mean, the consecration is the consecration. No reason in principle why it couldn't be done now, I suppose.
It could be, yes, it could be a double whammy.
We'd need to decide which bit wasn't going to be consecrated because we have to have the unconsecrated area.
Yeah, yes.
It's a thought. We would get the Bishop of Dover over here. I mean, would be a first. We've had the Archbishop, we may as well something of it.
I think the Bishop of Dover doing a return visit will be positive.
Right, okay, we try for that then. She might have a lot of trees to plant just at the minute though.
Well, that will talk. That's wrong way of
Well,
working.
we'll see. We'll see. It's worth a shot, recognising, of course, that it's a bit of a long shot.
Okay.
All right, okay. So we get to the annual return. This is the annual excitement. Right. Receive and note the annual internal audit report. Now, we've all had a copy of our Honorary Internal Auditor David Chessum's report. It's the first time the report's ever taken 4 pages, but it's very good in my opinion. What I would like to propose, if councillors are willing, is that I actually respond to him in writing, both to thank him for the report and to respond to some of the things he says in it.
Yeah.
You know, saying, yes, good point, yes, we will look at that. No, we do this slightly differently, you know, this is what we think is the way to do it, or whatever. But I think it deserves more than just being, okay, that's our internal audit report. I think we should actually be coming up with a response.
I agree.
Okay. Everyone happy with that?
Yep.
Yes.
I think perhaps because it would be important, we ought to try and draft that and bring it to another meeting. There's no rush. I just think we ought to actually get a response.
I think you can response and then we can deal with anything that rises out.
Indeed, I think so. But it's an excellent report and it does raise some interesting points. I mean, as he said tonight, he found a sort of template and went through it, and it raised questions that were worth asking.
Yeah.
I think it's worth also saying, of course, he didn't come up with anything very serious.
No.
He came up with some recommendations, and one of them we know about. One of them I don't think actually makes much difference, and the third one we probably ought to do, but I don't know how we do it, which is a risk management policy. Risk management policies are the sort of thing that, great idea, everyone agrees with them, but what the hell do you do? How do you write it? That's your area, isn't it, Paul?
I think we'll be guided first by what he
Yeah.
suggested, and then see where the gaps are.
Yeah.
And there will probably be a calc template or a NALC template and something like that, and then we can take that and apply it and make sure it's relevant to us. I would have thought.
Okay, maybe there is. You're
Yeah.
right. I mean, he found a template for
Yeah.
his report to say what questions have I got to answer. Okay, so we've received a note of that and I will reply. The next one is to resolve to approve the annual governance statement, which is this standard form of small print that you all had. So, are you going to read them out like you usually do? You can or I can, I don't mind which. You can talk for a change.
Well, if I go through the what it means bits, the first one, if we say we're asked to go yes or no, if we say yes, we have prepared our accounting statements in accordance with the accounts and audit regulations, which we have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So you tick that one. Yes.
The second one is we have made proper arrangements and accepted responsibility for safeguarding the public money and resources in its charge.
We can agree that that's
Yeah.
a yes.
Yes.
We have only done what it has the legal power to do and has complied with the proper practices in doing so. Yep.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
During the year, we gave all persons interested the opportunity to inspect and ask questions about this authority's accounts.
Yes, there's a standard statutory
Standard.
Notice boards.
Yes.
We have considered
Thanks for coming. Good night.
and documented the financial and other risks it faces and dealt with them properly. So that obviously comes up during the year.
Yeah, that's a yes. But we've just talked about that as well. I mean, everything could be improved. That's slightly different.
Number 6, we have arranged for a competent person, independent of the financial controls and procedures, to give an objective view on whether internal controls meet the needs of this smaller authority, which you've just had.
Excellent report.
We have responded to matters brought to our attention by the internal and external auditor. which anything that came up last year, obviously, which there weren't, we didn't, so there was nothing to do. And obviously this will be what we'll have to attend to during
This
the
will be
next
what
year.
we now have to respond to.
And the last one, we have disclosed everything we should have about its business activity during the year, including events taking place after the year end, if relevant. And there wasn't anything, but we got
So
to
yes.
report on a regular basis. Right, so you need to.
What about the last one?
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's where we trust funds, which we don't.
Okay, we don't have.
It doesn't refer to our. We're not sole managing trustee of the village hall, are we?
No.
Okay.
No, we're the
Custodian.
custodian.
Okay.
That's of the title.
Doesn't.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Just chair. There, please, and then I've got to sign
So I won't write the date in there for
it.
you.
No, dates already.
Right, that's that. And we look over the other side. The next page.
And this is your one with
The numbers.
all the figures.
All the figures, yeah.
Which
Now,
we
I went
see.
through checking this year's figures, which all tie up with what we agreed at the end of March.
Yeah.
They're all there, except for the fixed assets, which I didn't look up. But
That's the same as the one that we agreed last month.
indeed. And that has included any changes we suggested.
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
And the previous one is just last year's copied across.
Yes. Yes, all done. So you've just got to sign that one, just at the bottom.
Yeah. Right, okay, signing here. Good.
Very much. That's the bit where I have to do it. When I do it, I
Right.
sign it the month before and I
When you
confirm
do
with
it.
you.
Okay. So that is that, and that is done. We've done that, I think. Where's my agenda gone? Here it is. So that's all of the annual return A to F is done. Correspondence, Mrs Miriam Lewis Stocks Road planning application. Well, we've had the discussion in the public session, which I understand, I acknowledge that Mrs Lewis found unsatisfactory. We did perhaps also for other reasons. I think that a lot of the points she's made really are about Ashford's procedures, and she's had some answers from the Borough Councillor. Our position really is, we're the tail on the dog here, really. We're not in charge of the way all this works, and we're a thing along the way. We've answered the question of whether the ward member consulted the parish council or the chairman before taking action. That's been covered. There's mention about the strong opposition in the village, or strong opposition in part of the village for sure. A lot of neutrals, it would seem. Miriam was asking why Councillor Burgess had done certain things, and that's not okay. That's not a matter for us. And then a thing about Rye College. Well, frankly, is this a view the parish council shares? We don't have a position on how the children choose to go to Rye or Tenderden. Personally, my view is that any parents that want their children to go to Tenterden ought to be able to do it, or Ashford. And I'd like them to have school buses as well, which they don't get. But beyond that, I think that's all above our pay grade on the whole. It's other people's processes. Okay, Jean Elliott raised the issue about the War Memorial Garden, which she has been looking after with her colleagues in the Women's Institute, and it's now come down to a Women's Institute of 1, and she's asking if we could relieve her of that responsibility.
It is now all weed free. I spoke to her this morning.
Excuse me.
Yes, she is. And it's all looking good now.
My feeling, and there are obviously delicacies here that we understand, my feeling would be we've got 2 gardening groups that do a splendid job. One does the triangle, and the other does the Memorial Garden. They're both doing brilliantly for us. My feeling would be, just bearing in mind the sheer square meterage and the sort of ground it is, that the logic would perhaps be to ask the people who look after the triangle if they would be willing to add it to their roster. It won't add very much effort to what they're doing, rather than go the other way where they're covering much bigger square footage.
Well, Lexi has been helping, she cut all the grasses
Right, okay.
down,
So that's perfect.
yeah.
The other thing is that the people doing the Memorial Garden have also done a brilliant job on the hedge coming down from the corner to the old jail. I mean, that was a really stout job they did, and it was very much appreciated.
It's all coming out again now.
Well, it is, but at least they've taken the big heavy wood back, and now it gets a bit easier. So is that something everyone agrees, that the first step would be to ask Lexi if she can, with her team?
And
that would be brilliant.
Yeah.
And incidentally, if they want to up the game in the Little War Memorial Garden with a bit more planting, then obviously we can support that if they feel they can look after it.
Yes, I would be very positive
because
doing that.
It could be more colourful than it is.
Yes.
At the risk of stating the obvious, I think that as Jean's written to us, we might want to take the opportunity of thanking her and all her other WI colleagues over the years.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And explain that we're going to be asking the other group, or however you put it, to take over, and if any of her colleagues want to take part, then direct them in that direction.
That's right.
I did, when I replied to say I did say we'd like to thank you for what we've done in the past.
Yeah, that can always be the picture.
Oh yes, but I did.
Yeah, sure, good. Bad. Okay, that's that bit. Payments for authorisation. Now, we talked about Outlook on Oxley last time and deferred it, saying that thank you very much for coming and happy farming and planning. Good night, thank you for coming. We said we'd defer it while the clerk had a discussion with our member, as it were, our delegate to the Outlook committee, which is Sam, who's not here tonight. That has happened.
Yes, she says that the printing costs have increased by around £100 each month, so any increase that we might give would be appreciated. But she says she is looking to get it back down again. So whether we go, suggest we were paying almost £1,000, so if we went with 1,300 for this time and see how she goes, so that in 6 months' time when they come to ask again, we will know how they're doing.
I think it's suitable at this point in time. Okay.
That would be helpful, because what we were suffering. Thanks for coming very much. Thanks very much for coming, Miriam, and we'll see you again. Good night. Yes. We pay kind of the lion's share of Outlook.
Yes.
Stone pays some. Stone will be more embarrassed if they actually want to at all to pay any more, because they run on a very tight budget. And whereas we make sure we can actually afford to do what we want to do. And I think that if we went up to 1,300, that would be appreciated. And as Yvonne said, I mean, what was happening otherwise was they were cutting pages.
Yes, I know. We don't want that. We want to increase if at all possible.
Indeed. So I think we can well afford it.
Yeah.
We have a limit on what we can spend under section 137 of about roughly £8 an elector, and other things come under it as well. But we've got quite a bit of headroom. We won't even if we paid 1,300 twice, we won't embarrass ourselves.
No. I think I would totally support that at this stage.
I agree.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I think it will be appreciated by their committee. They are also struggling a bit because they've lost some people. You know, it's always difficult to keep replacing them.
Yeah.
It's the sort of volunteers problem across the village, really.
Yes, it is. It doesn't get any better at times.
Okay, so we're on to working party reports. Caretaker.
Caretaker, well, apart from the fact that, of course, now the grass is growing and growing and growing. So I'm just on a bit of a back foot all the time. I'm getting people saying, grass is getting
Like my
long."
garden.
Yeah.
I think the funny thing is that people seem to think that the grass that he cuts doesn't grow the same as their own. And generally the grass he cuts is rather coarser, and so it grows faster than nice garden grass. We're talking about having a caretaker meeting as well,
Yes, yes,
so
we will
that's
have
something
things
Colin,
to
you and I
discuss.
need to get together.
Yeah.
Finance, the monthly transaction statements,
Yes, not an awful lot
not much there.
on it.
No, it's pretty flat. Pretty flat.
Obviously, the sports club that we gave the donation towards their Jubilee tea party, which I think for those that went, it was
Brilliant.
a lovely afternoon.
Yeah,
And
it
then
was.
there's very little on the caretaker this
Yes, it was.
last month.
Yes, it was
Indeed.
nice afternoon.
You'll notice also, I think it was last month as well, that the workplace pension for Alf has been moved back from Unity Trust to Lloyd's Bank,
Yes.
so
No.
it triggers us.
Oh.
Was it last month?
No, it's never been.
Oh,
You were suggesting that I changed it to
Oh,
put
did
it
you
into
say?
Unity
I
Bank.
thought it did.
And
I thought you
no.
moved it and then moved
No,
it back.
no,
You never did.
no,
Okay.
no.
No, it's been left.
So how come you didn't get a statement when?
Because the payment didn't go through that month.
That's why it was. Okay.
Yes.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I want to keep it there.
No, I totally understand the reason you want to have it there. I thought it had moved when you didn't get the statement. It was just a different reason,
I think it went through on the first of the following month.
which was a problem. Okay, so I've signed for the main one, and then the caretaker one is a little bit out of it. We've got nothing on it at all. No spares. You know, when he always goes and buys his spares.
Oh yes, yeah.
No spares,
that's
no
coming this
diesel.
month, no, because that came through in the previous month.
Previous month, yeah.
Yes, it was an early date, so I was able to include it in April.
Right, hang on.
Thank you. Okay.
So they're done. Right, finance we've done, planning.
Planning, well, it's just, I only, well, it's when Jeremy commented that he'd spoken to the owner at Sycamore Cottage and whose application had gone through quite quickly, granted by Ashford, but I hadn't picked it up, it hadn't come through to me, so I haven't picked it up, so I've now said
You did go
it was
through.
granted.
So you'll put it on the next agenda anyway. Right, open spaces. We don't have a open spaces rep anymore.
No.
Highways, Paul?
A couple of points made to me. One is the repair work between Cooper's Corner and Potman's Heath has partially been done. The chap has gone out with his spray can and put white round all the potholes, and I guess they might have run out of filler because they got out 2/3, but they've still got to do a bit between probably Cuckoo Cottage and Cooper's Corner. The other thing I said I'd pass on, because several people mentioned it, it's not in our parish, but it actually coming up towards up the hill from Smallhithe. What's the
Somehow?
where the vet Herondon, that up there. If you go down.
Oh, where it's a
And
roller
road up
coaster.
and down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that people mentioned it's a complete disaster there. There are huge ruts, it's always wet.
Yes.
And also, several people mentioned to me, what could be done about between Tesco and West Cross.
Oh, that's
I mean, it seems to be getting worse on a daily basis.
I think, I would imagine they're probably not going to do anything up the West Cross bit because they've still got all the heavy traffic,
Yeah.
heavy vehicles.
Yeah.
And as far as the roller coaster bit, Summerhill, just beyond Summerhill, I would imagine that's because that water leak, until they've sorted that water problem out,
Right.
Yes,
then,
yeah.
because it just causes.
Just continues doing it.
If you remember when they did round beyond
Yes.
Pear Tree,
Yeah.
they wanted to do right the way up to the Pear Tree Bend, And I said to them, well, until you've sorted that water leak out, as
No
soon as
point.
you repair it, it will make potholes, so you're just wasting money.
Yeah.
So they took it up to where the leak, but I see it's now beginning to go into where they did the repair work.
Yeah.
It's just a complete waste of money.
Yeah.
They've got to sort the problem out.
Yeah. So should the answer be when people raise it that I mean, is this something that we should just direct everyone to Mike Hill, given the fact he's local? And
Well,
he has
if I
that,
go, I
what
keep
is that?
meaning to do it, is to not put it on as a complaint,
Yeah.
as a fault, but go straight to our highways bloke
Yeah.
and steward and ask him, where are we at? Because he must know. Mike Hill must know because he drives
Well,
that
exactly.
way, so everyone knows. So there must be something higher up that why they're not doing something about it.
Yeah.
So I'll see what I can find out.
And the other thing, sorry.
I was going to say, somebody has reported that bit of Summerhill, haven't they?
I would imagine, yes,
From
yes there is.
whether
Yes.
it's the 10th of an end, I'm saying, but somebody came out and looked at it, didn't they?
Oh, they did, they just tried to.
And they said they'd do it.
There was the big accident.
Urgently,
a couple of months ago
yes.
as well.
I think that was on next door or something like
Oh,
that.
Janet.
But nothing's happened. Right,
Janet's
the other
been
side
Yes,
of the road.
yes, Jane could come out. She told them it was urgent.
Yes.
A half better story from KCC is that it must have been yesterday, I think, after I'd been meaning to do it for a few days, I reported the drop curb coming around from the Swan towards my place on the bend, where the curb goes down, the tarmac goes into a sort of slope, and if you're not careful walking along there, you can stumble
Into the road.
And I've been meaning to report because it suddenly got worse. There's a huge crack along the path and the whole thing's shifted.
Yeah.
And I put it on about lunchtime yesterday when I was being nagged yet again by my wife about it. And when I went to the shop at about 5 o'clock, it had already been marked up. And I thought initially, well, maybe someone reported it last week. Until I got further along the road, and I did something else yesterday. I reported about 5 or 6 manhole covers, all of which were trip hazards along the path. And 3 of them have been marked up. So obviously yesterday, I just hit it right, and the guy was out within about 3 hours. It was astonishing.
Long may
And they've
continue.
marked the whole of
Yeah,
that piece
absolutely.
of path up, by the way, to do the whole lot.
And if anyone's wondering why we have an extensive temporary traffic lights outside of my house,
Yes.
nothing to do with me.
Well, I've been
It's,
asked.
it's UK Power Networks. I won't give you the whole story, but it's been a bit of a sort of comic opera going on there. They keep extending it, and they've dug some huge holes there. And if you look in the hole, it says danger high voltage cable. It's just so don't jump in the hole, obviously. We think that they say they think it's a fuse has gone. And they thought it was at one end, and now they realise it's at the other end. So they're trying to find out, and they weren't there today at all. So we've come to the conclusion they can't find the part, the fuse, to replace it. I think their permission ends this week, so presumably there'll be a penalty if they don't fill it in. The problem with that bit of road is that in previous roadworks it's then sunk. Although I have to say, when I reported it Highways about 5 years ago, they were out within about 2 days to fix it. So when you get it reported, it's fine. But it is a problem. And when we come out, we don't know whether it's red or white, red or green. So it's a bit of a,
Red and white is right.
we can't see the traffic lights. Anyhow, they assure me it'll be finished by the end.
We thought it was very good, you being personally.
Indeed.
Traffic calming.
All digging a hole again.
Yeah.
It's worth bearing in mind, it's important what they're doing. When we lived in North Wales years ago, our lights in a close, 18 houses, and the lights used to, in the old days of the old bulbs, they used to flash quite often. You get a whole series of flash, the sort of flashing on the bulbs. And everyone just knew we had, pretty rubbish electric. And a lot of the time we were living abroad. I'm not sure if it was when we were abroad or if after we'd moved away we still knew some of the neighbours. And he worked for the CGB anyway. And he said they sorted that problem out eventually that was causing all the flashing. He said one day there was a big bang and the cable under the road exploded. It really did explode, and it was the join in the cable from the main one to our one and it had just been arcing away for years until eventually it got to the point where it just went bang.
Well,
And
that's
then
what
they, did have
happens.
to come, then they did have to come and fix it. So you might be safer if they sorted out.
I hope so. I hope so. I
If
do
you
know
were
that.
driving over it at the time.
Yeah. We have had those. Yes, right.
Okay. POWs.
No.
Well, a couple more styles that I've reported.
Right.
That's of course it's dry, nice and dry now.
Yeah.
Although we've got rain that we can't get through.
Cemetery and churchyard.
Cemetery and churchyard, yes. I had a request for the churchyard to be cut, ready for the concert. So I asked Robert and he came down straight away and did that. And I've met Alf and Paul Stone down where Paul's going to put the metal fence in between where the gap is. And we had a big discussion last week, and now Alf knows where he's got clear, take some tree bits out, weed killer and stuff, so that we can get that ready for Paul and so to hopefully, once his knee allows him to get on to it next month.
Okay. Date of next council meeting planned to be the 12th of July, Battle of the Boyne. Items for information, the Ewan Lamb sign update. The post has been delivered. It's in the front of the post.
Yeah.
So now they're thinking about the work.
The cost of which is £450.
1250.
450.
Rather less than I think we would.
Well, I think
That's
sort of,
just for the
That's just for the post. But I mean, we were talking about spending about 800 or something.
Yeah.
950.
Yeah.
We've still got to get the thing up,
Yeah.
down and up, and we've got to do a bit of mitigating, but you know, we're doing well so far.
Yeah.
My estimate from having looked at it, and I think this was the plan, it is going to be lower than before, it will be shorter. So in other words, rather than, oh, there's a sign up there, it will be kind of a bit more like the other sign that we've got in the area. Lower.
Okay.
Another item for information, I don't know if everyone will have been there yet, but the Swan is of course open.
Yeah, I was going to make comment about that. I thought we should recognise the success of
Absolutely.
Friday. I don't know about the rest of the holiday,
Indeed.
but I think it was. It seemed to go down very well.
Indeed, I went on the Friday. Thank you very much for coming, Phil, and thank you, Jill. And thank you, and I'm sorry, I know who you are and I've forgotten your name.
You're not telling.
You're not telling me.
Go on, upsetting.
Is it?
Yeah.
Jeff, of course. Thank you for coming. You don't need to put the chair
It's all right,
away,
Jeff.
but it's good to see you. Thank you very much.
It's one of the jobs we actually have to do.
Oh, you signed up.
Brilliant.
Take care.
Thank you, Jeff.
Mind how you go, Jeff.
Yes, I just felt we should make comment in the minutes that the Swan was open.
Indeed, absolutely.
And there was an excellent turnout. I mean, you was there earlier than I was.
Friday, it was hot.
You went home to dinner while I was there.
I went home about
8 o'clock. Yeah.
But I mean, I guess there's probably 100 people there at that point.
Well, there
more.
were. Yes, it was. Yeah. Mostly behaving themselves.
There was a comment on next door, which about the bottles, which is a bit unfortunate.
It's been responded to straight away by Georgia.
Yeah.
Oh, good, good.
It's a shame that gets on to next door.
Yeah.
You know, I think that people should be encouraged if there is an issue. That, you know, they've been very responsive, people in the pub, and I just think that if there is an issue, and there are bound to be issues, it's public, it happens. That the public should rather not air it on the wider social media and just go and just sort of explain it quietly.
Well, Kevin did say to me before we opened, you know, he said, well, I'm opening on Friday, he said, and that would probably be the day of the first complaint. But Georgia replied straight away saying, very sorry to hear it, I will get a grip of it, and just bear in mind we've got CCTV over the whole place, including the car park, so which was a good point to make.
Yes.
So we will, if you tell us when it's happening, we'll have a chance of getting a grip.
That's good.
That's good.
I mean, it must be very difficult on Friday night. I don't know what it was like over the weekend, but it was jam packed.
Oh yeah. Saturday was quieter when I went by, at least early evening, and then, but okay, Sunday I went with Nuala, and it was quiet, and he said, you know, quietish. I mean, he saw, you know, 20 people, maybe more with the garden, and he said, this is what I would have quite liked on Friday. You know, Friday was a bit of a baptism. Yesterday was quite interesting because the car park wasn't full, but it got quite a few vehicles in it, quite a few fellas sitting out in the car park as I walked past. And the thing was, they were all vans.
Were they?
So it's the artisans coming home, the builders and that, and they're not necessarily Wittersham, of course, they can just be people.
Yeah.
So it's, I think it's got the beginnings of doing okay.
Well, it was a good start.
Excellent, yeah.
Do we have to say roughly when they're going on to the food?
She said at least a month.
Okay. Yeah.
Is it purely because of the machinery, etc., or else is it staffing as well?
It may be staffing, but I think the key thing is they've still got to do the titivating of the restaurant and the kitchen.
Yeah.
What they did, they obviously they focused on the 2 bars, the entrance, the upstairs to B&B en suites, and the toilets. I mean, the toilets were all ripped out and redone. I haven't been in them since, but when they were putting the building in, I mean, it was all done nicely.
Well, I think they've done a great job. It looks very smart.
Very smart.
Anyone who lives down Swan Street, the price of their house, value of their house has gone up 25 grand.
I think so. And also, as my gardener said this afternoon, he was very made up. He said, he agreed it may not last. He said that the beer's cheap for a pub. He said £4.80 for a premium lager. He said it can be £5.50 elsewhere.
I think I came across a different price list that Friday. I worked out my price of Guinness was £6, but we mustn't forget the sports club, which is considerably cheaper.
And they'll always be cheaper. But the Swan is a pub, it's a different thing. But if he's very competitive against others, and it may only be open, I don't know.
Well, it's a good asset for the village. It's one of the key characteristics of a successful village as hopefully the village grows.
Indeed.
Are you all going down there after this meeting?
Could do. We might start having the meetings there, except that we're not allowed. Right. And that's banned by the Act. Unless we can say that there's nowhere else. Okay, that's everything, unless anyone else has got. Okay.
Yeah.
So now we need to resolve by the nature of the sensitivity of the next item to exclude the public. Can we agree that?
Does that mean that gets turned off?
It will do when I need a proposal.
Okay, propose that we exclude the public.
Proposed, seconded,
Yes.
Colin, all agreed?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yvonne will now turn off the microphone.
Good evening.